The string quartet was playing a soft, hopeful melody, the kind you hear in movies right before the happily ever after. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the old chapel, casting kaleidoscope patterns on the white roses that lined the aisle. Everything was perfect. Almost from the corner of my eye, I could see three empty chairs in the front row, polished oak, adorned with the same white ribbons as all the others, but gaping, vacant. A silent testament to a wound I was trying desperately to ignore on the most important day of life. My dad, my mom, and my sister, Chloe. My entire immediate family, not here. You okay? M. Jordan, my soon-to-be husband, squeezed my hand. His thumb gently stroked my knuckles. He knew. Of course, he knew. He'd been the one holding me 2 weeks ago when I'd sobbed into his chest after the final definitive phone call. I'm fine. I whispered back, forcing a smile that felt like cracking plaster. Just happy. It wasn't a complete lie. I was happy. Looking at Jordan with his kind eyes and steady presence, I felt a profound sense of peace and love. He was my future, my real family. But the past has a nasty way of clinging to your ankles, and right now it felt like a lead weight. The official story, the one I'd been forced to tell inquisitive guests from Jordan's side, was that my dad had thrown his back out. A terrible, last-minute thing. I'd say with a practiced, sympathetic frown. And my mom couldn't possibly leave him. And of course, my sister had to stay and help. They're just devastated to miss it. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. The real reason they'd given me over the phone was a cocktail of flimsy excuses. Emily, you know money is tight. My mom had started, her voice laced with that familiar, manipulative guilt. A 3-hour drive, a hotel room, a new dress, it all adds up. And your father's back has been acting up? A 3-hour drive? Not a cross-country flight. Not international trek. 3 hours, I had offered to pay for everything. The gas, the hotel, a spot treatment for my dad supposedly itching back. I'd have chartered a gold-plated helicopter if it meant they'd be there. The answer was always a gentle but firm, "Oh, honey, don't be silly. We just can't make it work." Chlu, my younger sister, had been even more dismissive. "M, it's just one day. We'll celebrate with you guys later. Besides, Dad really is in a lot of pain." Her voice was flat, bored, as if I'd asked her to help me move a couch instead of witness the biggest commitment of my life. So I stood there, clutching Jordan's hand, listening to the efficient talk about love and family, and I stared at those 3 empty chairs. I had saved them anyway. A small, stupid part of me, the same part that used to believe in Santa Claus, harbored a flicker of hope that the chapel doors would burst open and they'd rush in, breathless and apologetic. A wedding miracle, but the doors remained closed and the chairs remained empty. The reception was a blur of laughter, clinking glasses, and heartfelt toasts from Jordan's family. His parents welcomed me with open arms, his dad's speech about gaining a daughter bringing fresh tears to my eyes. Every kind word was a balm and a sting, a reminder of what I had and what I was so painfully missing. I was trying to be present, to soak in the joy, but my mind kept drifting. Why wasn't a 3-hour drive worth it for them? We weren't estranged. We spoke every couple of weeks. I sent birthday cards and Christmas presents. It wasn't perfect, but I thought we were family. There had always been a subtle distance, a feeling that I was on the outside of inside joke between the 3 of them, but I chalked it up to personality differences. Chlu was the bubbly, easy one. I was the serious, ambitious one. Maybe I was just harder to love. Time for your best friend's speech. The DJ announced, and Lily, my maid of honor, my rock, strode to the microphone. She looked stunning in her emerald green dress, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She started with the usual stories. Our awkward middle school years, our college shenanigans. But then her voice softened. To see Emily find someone like Jordan, she said, looking directly at me, is to see a friend find a home. She deserves every ounce of happiness, today and always, because no one has a bigger or more generous heart than Emily Franklin. Her words, meant to be a comfort, just twisted the knife. Generous. All I'd ever done was give. My time, my energy, my love, my money. I'd helped Chloe with her down payment on her car. I'd paid for my parents' anniversary dinner last year at a restaurant they couldn't afford. And yet, when I needed them for one day, they couldn't give me their presents. Later, as the party was in full swing, Lily pulled me aside, her face pale. She was fidgeting with her phone, a habit she had when she was nervous. "What's up?" I asked, trying to sound breezy. Did my Uncle Barry start doing the worm on the dance floor again? And I don't know if I should show you this. Maybe it can wait until tomorrow, she said, her voice low. Lily, whatever it is, just show me. The worst part of the day is already over. Oh, how wrong I was. She hesitated, then turned her phone screen towards me. My cousin just tagged your sister in a photo on Instagram. It was posted about 3 hours ago. 3 hours ago, right when I was walking down the aisle. Right when I was saying, I do. My stomach clenched. On the screen was a picture, bright and saturated with tropical sunlight. It wasn't a living room with a sick father. It was the deck of a massive cruise ship. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, and the turquoise water of the Caribbean stretched out behind them. And there they were. My father, standing tall and straight, no sign of a bad back. My mother beaming, a pica colada in her hand. My sister, Chloe, laughing, her arms slung around. My uncles, my cousins, the whole Franklin clan. They were all there, all of them. And they were all wearing identical custom-made shirts, bright yellow monstrosities with cheesy blue font. On the front, it reading, Franklin Family Reunion 2024. The air left my lungs in a single, silent gasp. The string quartet music, the laughter, the clinking glasses. It all faded into a dull, roaring sound in my ears. They hadn't just skipped my wedding. They had planned a vacation. A reunion, they had coordinated outfits. They had lied, bald-faced, and collectively, choosing a party cruise over my wedding day. And they did it on the exact same day, at the exact same hour. It wasn't a choice of inconvenience. It was a statement. My world didn't just crack. It atomized. Emily, breathe. Lily's hands were on my shoulders, grounding me. I stared at the photo, at my father's wide, carefree grin. The man who claimed he was in too much pain to sit in Har for a car 3 hours was standing on a moving ship, probably on his way to a shuffleboard tournament. The hypocrisy was so staggering, so profoundly cruel, it felt like a physical blow. I stumbled away from the dance floor, my wedding dress suddenly feeling like a lead shroud. I found a quiet corner on the patio, gasping for air that didn't feel thick with betrayal. Jordan found me moments later, his face a mask of concern. Lily showed me, he said softly, wrapping his arms around me. I collapsed against him, the sobs I'd been holding back all day finally erupting, harsh and ragged. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was a cold, hard rage. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I smiled. I cut the cake. I had my first dance. I performed the role of the happy bride, but inside, I was a ghost. My mind was a relentless loop of that photograph. Their smiling faces, the matching shirts, the sun, the sea. Every smile felt like a personal insult. Every laugh was a mockery. When we finally got to our hotel room, the feisty age shattered. I tore off the beautiful white dress, throwing it in a heap on the floor. How could they? I whispered, pacing the room. How could they do this to me, Jordan? On my wedding day? I don't know, honey. I don't know, he said, pulling me into a hug. But we're going to figure it out. I'm with you. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The image of that yellow t-shirt burned into my brain. The lie was so elaborate, so complete. It wasn't just my parents and sister. It was my entire family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. They had all known. They had all participated. I was not just forgotten. I was deliberately excluded. An entire branch of my family tree had been sawed off, and I was only just realizing I was in free fall. The next morning, fueled by a sleepless night and a gallon of bitter coffee, I started digging. My hands were trembling as I scrolled through Chulu's social media. Her profile was private, but we were still friends. I scrolled back months, and there it was. A post from 6 months ago in a private family group, a picture of a cruise ship itinerary. Can't wait for our Franklin family reunion. Let the countdown begin. Clue had captioned it with a dozen sunshine and boat emojis. The date spanned this exact weekend. They had been planning this for over half a year. Every phone call over the last 6 months, where they'd asked about wedding plans, where they'd feigned interest in the color of the bridesmaid dresses, it had all been a lie. They knew. They had always known they wouldn't be there. The back pain, the financial troubles, it was all a pathetic, transparent charade. I felt the wave of nausea. Who were these people? How could a mother look her daughter in the eye, listen to her talk excitedly about her wedding dress, all while knowing she'd be sipping a cocktail in the Caribbean on that very day? My rage needed a target, but I couldn't bring myself to call them. What would I even say? Congratulations on your son, and sorry it conflicted with my wedding. The thought was so absurd it bordered on hysterical. Then an idea sparked a memory of a conversation from years ago. My mom had a close friend, Deborah, a notorious gossip who she'd had a falling out with recently. If anyone knew the Franklin family's dirty laundry, it was her. I found her number in my old contacts and dialed before I could lose my nerve. Emily, honey, is that you? I saw the pictures from your wedding. You looked beautiful. She chirped, her voice oozing saccharine sympathy. I was so shocked to hear your parents couldn't make it. Frank's back? You know, it's always been his back. That's actually why I'm calling Deborah, I said, my voice tight. I know about the cruise. There was a pause on the other end of the line, then a long, slow sigh. Oh, honey, I was hoping you wouldn't find out like that. It's just awful what they did. Why was the only word I could choke out. Money, dear. It always comes down to money, she said, and the floodgates opened. Deborah, emboldened by her feud with my mother, told me everything. The cruise wasn't just a vacation. It was a celebration of my father coming into a little extra cash. What extra cash? I asked, confused. My dad worked a steady but modest job at a logistics company. Well, you know your grandfather, God rest his soul, always looked out for you, Deborah said, her voice dropping conspiratorially. He set up a little account for you when you were born. A nest egg. Your dad was on the account, to manage it until you were older. My blood ran cold. I knew about the account. Grandpa Frank, my dad's father, had been my hero. He was a quiet, hardworking man who smelled like sawdust and peppermint. He'd slip me $20 bills and tell me to invest in my future. He passed away when I was 16, and he'd always told me he had set aside some money for me for college or a rainy day. My dad managed it, and whenever I asked, he'd just say, "It's growing, sweetheart. Don't you worry about it." Deborah, what about the account? Well, From what I heard from your mother before we stopped speaking, she said, savoring the drama, Frank had to dip into it to pay for the cruise. A big chunk of it. He took the whole family, Said it was a thank you for all their support. Paid for everyone's ticket. Something about $8,000. $8,000. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the floor. $8,000 of my grandfather's money. My money used to fund a family vacation that was intentionally planned to exclude me on my wedding day. The betrayal was no longer just emotional. It was financial. It was theft. As soon as I hung up, I was on my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. It took me 20 minutes to reset the password for the joint savings account, a password I hadn't used in years. My dad had always handled the statements. It's easier this way, less paperwork for you to worry about, he'd said. I had trusted him. The page loaded. My heart hammered against my ribs. I clicked on view statements. I went back a year, then 2, then 5. It was a bloodbath. It started small. $100 here, $200 there, labeled miscellaneous withdrawal. Then the amounts grew. 500, 1,000. The withdrawals became more frequent, the descriptions more brazen. Car repair. Home improvement. I knew for a fact they had a major car repair or home improvement in years. Their house was in the same state of gentle decay it had been in for my entire life. And then I saw it 2 months ago, a single withdrawal, zone $8. The description, travel agency. I scrolled further and further back, my hands shaking so violently I could barely control the mouse. I tallied the numbers, my mind reeling. The small thefts, the medium ones, the big one. It wasn't just 8,000. He had been systematically draining my grandfather's legacy for years. The final tally made me physically ill. I had to double check it, my vision blurring with tears of rage. $47,000. Nearly $47,000 was gone. The nest egg my grandfather had so carefully built for me, the money he wanted me to use for a down payment on a house or to start a business or for an emergency, had been pilfered. It had been used to pay for their dinners out, their shopping sprees, Clue's car, and a goddamn Caribbean cruise. The foundation of my entire life crumbled in that moment. Every memory I had of my father felt tainted. I love you. Every piece of fatherly advice now seemed like a lie spoken by a thief. He wasn't just my father. He was a con man. And my mother and sister were his accomplices. This was no longer just about a missed wedding. This was about a decade of deception. This was about the systematic theft of my future. And the naive, hopeful girl who had saved 3 empty chairs at her wedding was gone. In her place was a woman who was about to go to war. The days that followed were a strange mix of profound grief and cold, methodical anger. Jordan was my anchor, handling everything with a quiet competence that amazed me. He made me eat. He held me when the rage gave way to gut-wrenching sobs. He listened as I pieced together the timeline of betrayal, each new realization a fresh stab to the heart. What do we do? I asked him one night, staring blankly at the ceiling of our small apartment. Do I confront them? Do I scream at them? What's the point? They'll just lie again. This is bigger than a family argument, Emily. Emily. His voice firm. They stole from you. A lot of money. This is a legal matter. Legal. The word hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Suing your own family. It felt like a plot from a trashy soap opera. But the more I thought about it, the more the idea took root. What other option did I have? They had left me no room for reconciliation. Their actions were a declaration that I meant nothing to them, that my future was less important than their fleeting pleasures. My mind went back to my grandfather. I remembered sitting on his lap in his workshop, the smell of wood shavings and old tools filling the air. He'd shown me the passbook for the savings account. "This is for you, little bird," he'd said, his voice a low rumble, "for when you spread your wings. Don't let anyone clip them." My father hadn't just clipped my wings. He'd ripped them off and sold them for vacation. Then, as if summoned by my thoughts, a strange thing happened. An official-looking letter arrived in the mail with a fancy letterhead from a law firm downtown, Harrison and Associates. I didn't recognize the name. "Probably junk mail," Jordan said, tossing a pile of catalogs onto the counter. But something made me open it. The letter was addressed to me. "Dear Ms. Emily Franklin, now Thompson, my name is Robert Harrison. I was the personal attorney for your late grandfather, Mr. Frank Franklin, sir. I am writing to you on a matter of some urgency regarding the execution of his estate. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience to schedule a meeting." My heart skipped a beat. My grandfather's lawyer. Why would he be contacting me now, nearly a decade after his death? I called the number immediately, my voice trembling as I explained who I was. Mr. Harrison agreed to see me the very next day. The law office, old school, dark wood, leather-bound books, and a faint smell of paper and dust. Robert Harrison was a man in his late 60s, with kind, wary eyes and a neatly trimmed white beard. He looked like he'd stepped out of a classic movie. "Emily," he said, shaking my hand warmly, "it's a pleasure to finally meet you. You have your grandfather's eyes. Please sit." I sat across from his enormous desk, Jordan beside me for support. "Mr. Harrison?" I began, not sure why I'm here. "My grandfather passed away a long time ago." "He did," Mr. Harrison said, leaning forward and folding his hands. "And he was a very smart, very careful man. He loved you more than anything in this world, Emily. He often told me you were the one true thing in his life." Tears welled in my eyes. Frank was also aware of his son's character. The lawyer continued delicately. "He worried about your father's financial irresponsibility. And so he took certain steps to protect you." He slid a thick bound document across the desk. "This is a copy of your grandfather's last will and testament, and the trust he established." I stared at the document, my mind struggling to keep up. "A trust. Your grandfather left everything to you, Emily," Mr. Harrison said, his voice gentle but clear. "Everything? What do you mean, everything?" "I mean the house he lived in, his portfolio of investments, his savings. It was all placed into a trust, the Emily Franklin Trust. Your father was named the trustee, but with very specific instructions. He was to manage the assets, and he was permitted to use a small portion of the interest for the upkeep of the property. However, the entirety of the trust, the house, the stocks, the principal, was to be turned over to you in full on one of two conditions: your 25th birthday or your wedding day. Whichever came first." The room started to spin. My 25th birthday had been 8 months ago. My wedding day was last weekend. "He never told me," I whispered. "I suspected as much." Mr. Harrison sighed. "I sent him a certified letter on your 25th birthday, reminding him of his legal obligation to transfer the assets. He never responded. I was preparing to take further action when I read about your wedding in the local paper. That's why I contacted you. The scale of my father's deception was more vast and monstrous than I could have possibly imagined. It wasn't just the $47,000 from the savings account. It was a house, an entire house that was legally mine. He had been living in my house for 8 months, collecting rent from the upstairs apartment, my rent, and depositing it into his own account. He had stolen my inheritance. All of it. He's been collecting rent from that house for years," I said, the realization dawning on me. Ever since my grandfather died, which is illegal, Mr. Harrison confirmed. The rent money was supposed to go into the trust account for maintenance and growth. Any personal use is a direct violation of his fiduciary duty. It's a crime, Emily. It's called defalcation, a very serious form of theft and fraud. Jordan squeezed my hand so hard I thought the bones might crack, but the pressure was a welcome anchor in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. There's more, Mr. Harrison said, opening another file. Your grandmother, Grace, was also a very shrewd woman. She knew her husband was setting up the main trust for you, but she also knew her son. Just before she passed, she came to me without telling anyone, not even Frank, and set up her own separate trust for you, a secret one. He pulled out another, smaller document. She funded it with $50,000 from her own inheritance. Her instructions were clear. This was to remain hidden from your parents. I was not to speak of it until you were 30 or in case of a dire emergency. Emily, what your father did, I consider that a dire emergency. $50,000, untouched. Safe. A secret gift from a grandmother I barely remembered, a quiet act of love and protection from beyond the grave. I broke down completely then, my sobs echoing in the quiet, wood-paneled office. It was a cry of grief for the grandparents I missed so terribly, of rage at the parents who had betrayed me so completely, and of a strange, fierce gratitude for this unexpected lifeline. Mr. Harrison waited patiently until my tears subsided. He pushed a box of tissues across the desk. Your grandfather also left this for you, he said, handing me a small, locked wooden box. He said you'd know what to do with it. I took the box. It was his old cigar box, the one he kept his special things in. Carved into the top were his initials, F. Inside, I knew I would find the key. The key was a metaphor he always used. You hold the key to your own happiness, little bird. In that box, I found a stack of letters, tied with twine, all addressed to me in his spidery handwriting. Letters he had written for me to read when I was older, and under them, a small, ornate silver key, the key to my new life. I spent that evening reading my grandfather's letters. They were filled with his quiet wisdom, his hopes for my future, and his unwavering belief in me. In the last letter, written shortly before he died, he was more direct. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, it means I am gone and you are a woman grown. I hope your life is full of joy. I have done my best to provide you with a good start, a foundation upon which you can build your dreams. I have to be honest with you, though. I worry about your father. He is my son and I love him, but he has a weakness in his character money when in responsibility. I have put legal protections in place, but you may have to be strong. You may have to fight for what is rightfully yours. Do not be afraid to do so. Your future is more important than his feelings. Remember, you hold the key. That was it. The final push I needed. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about honoring my grandfather's legacy. It was about justice. The next morning, I called Mr. Harrison. I want to proceed, I said, my voice clear and steady. I want to file a lawsuit. I want to freeze his assets. And I want to press criminal charges. The silence on the other end was brief. I was hoping you'd say that, he replied. Let's get to work. The first shot was fired via court order. Mr. Harrison's team moved quickly, filing an emergency petition to involve my father's and my mother's. Assets frozen, pending investigation. The petition included bank statements from the trust account, the cruise ship photo, and a sworn affidavit from me. A judge signed it almost immediately. The fallout was instantaneous. My phone started blowing up with calls and texts from numbers I hadn't heard from in years. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The ones from the cruise, The first few messages were confused. Hey, my bank card isn't working. Do you know what's going on? Then, as news of the lawsuit spread through the family grapevine, the tone shifted to outrage. How could you do this to your own father? One text from my Aunt read, after all he's done for you, you're an ungrateful brat. It was laughable. What had he done for me exactly? Stolen my inheritance, skipped my wedding. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. They were a hive mind, a cult of delusion with my father as their charismatic leader, and I had dared to question their reality. My parents, of course, tried to call me dozens of times. I didn't answer. Their voicemails were a pathetic mix of feigned ignorance, anger, and theatrical pleading. Emily, honey, there's been a terrible mistake. My mother's voice quivered in one message. Your father would never take anything from you. This lawyer is filling your head with lies. Please call us. You've gone too far, Emily. My father roared in the next one. You're tearing this family apart over a misunderstanding. You call off these lawyers right now, or you will regret it. Regret it. The only thing I regretted was not seeing them for who they were sooner. Then they took their campaign public. My sister Chloe, the family's social media guru, posted a long, tearful screed on Facebook. It was a work of fiction worthy of an award. She painted me as a spoiled, vindictive daughter, married to a controlling husband who had turned me against my loving family. She claimed my father had simply borrowed a small amount of money with every intention of paying it back, and that the cruise was a last-minute surprise. He'd arranged to lift the family's spirits. The post was shared dozens of times by their friends and our extended family. The comments were a cesspool of judgment. I always knew there was something off about her. Shameful? Family is everything. She'll learn her lesson one day. For a moment, I faltered. The public shaming was brutal. But then something amazing happened. Lily, my fierce, loyal Lily, saw the post. She took a screenshot of Kalu's lies and then posted the cruise ship photo right underneath it, the one with the date and time stamped clearly visible. This last-minute surprise seems to have been planned for months, she wrote. And it happened at the exact moment Emily was saying her wedding vows. The loving family was on a booze cruise while she was crying over their empty chairs. Make it make sense. And then the story exploded. A friend of a friend worked for a local news blog. They picked it up. From there, it went to Reddit, to TikTok, to Twitter. My story, in its most basic, brutal form. Bride's family fakes poverty to skip wedding, goes on cruise with her stolen inheritance, was irresistible. It went viral. The court of public opinion is a swift and merciless thing. Suddenly, my parents' narrative was being torn to shreds. Strangers from all over the world flooded Chloe's post with comments calling out the lies, the matching t-shirts, the sheer cruelty of it all. People started sharing their own stories of financial abuse at the hands of family members. I became an unwilling symbol for a silent epidemic of familial theft. The nail in their coffin came from an unexpected source, Chloe's ex-boyfriend, a guy named Mark who she had dated for 3 years. Chloe had cheated on him and dumped him unceremoniously, and he was clearly still nursing a grudge. He posted a story time video on TikTok. So my ex's family is going viral right now, and I just want to add some context. He began, a smirk on his face. He then proceeded to detail, with receipts, years of their toxic behavior. He talked about how they always called Emily the boring, responsible one. While enabling Chloe's every whim, he recounted hearing his ex's father openly brag about managing Emily's little nest egg and how they were planning to use it to retire early. He even had a text from Chloe from 7 months prior. OMG, Dad is booking the cruise for the fam. The best part is it's on the same weekend as Emily's boring wedding. Lol. Perfect excuse not to go. That video got millions of views in 24 hours. The lie wasn't just exposed, it was crucified. My parents' attempts at damage control became more and more frantic. They gave a disastrous interview to a local TV station where my father, sweating under the studio lights, tried to claim the $47,000 withdrawal was a clerical error and that his back really did hurt. The reporter, armed with the facts, dismantled his story piece by piece. It was a train wreck. The breaking point came a week later. Desperate and cornered, my father did something unbelievably stupid. He drove the 3 hours to my apartment complex. When I didn't answer the buzzer, he tried to jimmy the lock on the front door of the building. A neighbor saw him and called the police. He was arrested for attempted breaking and entering. The mugshot of my father, disheveled, angry, and defeated, was the final pathetic image in their public self-destruction. The legal battles were grueling, but with the mountain of evidence against them, the outcome was never really in doubt. The civil court ruled entirely in my favor. The trust was immediately dissolved and all assets transferred to my name. I was granted ownership of my grandfather's house, the remaining money in the investment accounts, and a judgment against my father for the $47 that he had stolen, plus damages and legal fees. My grandmother's secret trust, my $50,000 safety net, remained untouched, a testament to her foresight. In the criminal case, my father pleaded guilty to avoid a longer sentence. He received 5 years of probation, was ordered to pay restitution, and had a felony on his record for the rest of his life. My mother, for her role as an accomplice, was sentenced to 200 hours of community service. Clue faced no legal charges, but her reputation was in tatters. Their little cable was broken. The day the final gavel fell, I didn't feel the elation I expected. I just felt quiet. It was over. The war was won, but the battlefield was littered with the ghosts of the family I thought I had. The first thing I did was sell the house. My grandfather's house, it was a beautiful old place, but it was tainted with my father's betrayal. I couldn't set foot in it without imagining him sitting at the kitchen table, forging withdrawal slips, stealing my future one piece at a time. I took only the wooden box of my grandfather's letters and let the rest go. The proceeds from the sale, combined with the trusts, gave Jordan and me a future my parents had tried so hard to steal. I changed my number. I blocked every single member of my family on every platform imaginable. I cut them out of my life with the clean, cold precision of a surgeon. There were no tearful goodbyes, no final confrontations. Their actions had spoken for them. My silence was my reply. About a year later, Jordan and I decided to have another wedding. Not a big, flashy affair. We went to a courthouse with Lily and Jordan's parents as our witnesses. Afterward, we had a simple, beautiful reception in our new backyard at the home we'd bought with the money my grandparents had left for me. We were surrounded by a small group of people who truly loved and supported us. This time, there were no empty chairs. It was perfect. We built a new life, a life based on honesty, trust, and mutual respect, all the things my own family had lacked. We created our own traditions, our own holidays, our own definition of family. It wasn't always easy. There were scars. Sometimes on a quiet night, a wave of grief would wash over me for the mother, father, and sister I should have had. But Jordan was always there to hold my hand, to remind me of the beautiful family we were building together. 2 years after that awful day, I gave birth to our daughter. We named her Grace after the grandmother who had secretly looked out for me, the woman whose quiet act rebellion had given me a final crucial piece of armor in my fight for freedom. Holding her in my arms, I looked into her tiny, perfect face, and I saw my grandfather's eyes looking back at me. I thought about the legacy of betrayal I had come from and the legacy of love and strength I was determined to build. My old family was a story of lies, of theft, of empty chairs. But this new family, my real family, would be a story of truth, a story of resilience, a story of a love so strong it could fill every empty space and build a future brighter than any Caribbean sun. My grandfather had told me I held the key. I finally understood what he meant. I hadn't just unlocked an inheritance, I had unlocked myself. And I was finally free to fly